This is my version of the Remembrance Poppy. You've got these beautiful big red petals and a lovely detailed centre with these black stamen that give a real contrast. It's lovely looking and it's obviously a very special flower. Now I've used Pro Gel Red here and I've added a little splash of this. I thought it was Sugar Flare, but it's not. It's Christmas Red by this company and it's exactly the same as Sugar Flare Christmas Red. It's one of these concentrated pastes, and I added a tiny amount of this with a toothpick and it's made a really lovely red. So if you've got that in your local Hobbycraft, it's a good one to get. It does stain your fingers though, so beware. Now I've crumb coated my cupcake in green here because I'm going to add some leaves, but you can crumb coat in green or red, it doesn't matter, as long as you've got a nice coat on there to keep the sponge nice and moist. Now this big bad boy here is a number 128 piping tip. It's just a huge petal tip, and the center one I'm going to use is a 125. So you can see the size difference here. If you haven't got the 128, if you don't want to get one, if you can't get hold of one, you could use a GG 1062 and your petals will just be a little bit smaller. For the center here, I'm using a Wilton 6B. It's got all these tiny little prongs on the end here and it creates a lot of detail without you having to do much work at all. And then for the stamen, just clean it off here so you can see it. I'm using a number 1 round piping tip. It's a really tiny round piping tip. And I've got my black in there. And then for any gaps, I've got the trusty 352 Bird's Beak leaf tip. And I've used some Pro Gel Olive Green in there. Now I'm going to use the edge of a knife here, just this blunt end. You can use a toothpick, anything you've got. I'm just going to sort of quarter the cake so that I've got markers where I want the petals. So I'm going to come down half one way, turn the cake, and down half the other way to make 4 quarters. And it's just a nice way of marking your cake out so that your petals are all the same size. You know you're going to cover it all with a 4 then. So take up your 128 monster tip, push all the buttercream down to the bottom, make sure you haven't got too much in your bag, and you want that bag to be nice and tight so you've got full control over what comes out. Now take up your cake and I'm going to line the piping tip up against the edge of the cupcake case, right in the middle of one of those quarters. And then I'm going to turn my wrist right round as I pipe the petal. So if you line it up in the center, you can turn your wrist over to one of the sides here. So you know that the petal is going to be right in the middle. Turn it right round to the side and then pull it round to the other side, and you know you've lined it up so your petal is going to come to the edge of the cupcake case. So turn your wrist and squeeze. You can see the center of the piping tip isn't moving, but I'm moving my wrist round to create a semicircle as I pipe, stop and come off. Now turn the cake and I'm going to do the opposite side. So line yourself up, turn your wrist around and then pipe really slowly round so you get a nice clean edge. Come all the way around, stop and come off. I'm just going to wipe off the piping tip here to make sure there's nothing on the other side that's going to ruin my petals. And then make sure your piping bag is really nice and tight. And we'll do the same thing again with the next 2. I'm going to overlap the petals just ever so slightly. So line yourself up, turn your wrist right round, and then as you come back round in that semicircle, keep your squeeze consistent stop and come off. Same thing again, turn your wrist, squeeze and turn really slowly. And when you've got to that last petal, just stop and come off. And then you've covered most of the cupcake with that big piping tip, and you've got 4 equal red petals on your cupcake. Now I'm going to take up the 1, 2, 5 piping tip, and you always want this fat end at the bottom, thin end at the top to create the top of the petal. Not too much buttercream in your piping bag, and push it all down to the bottom, make sure it's nice and tight. Now just practice turning the cake around in your hand that does the turning. Keep turning it all the way around so you get a feel of that and you can get to grips with it. Now hold the piping tip sort of upright in the middle of that poppy, so we're going to cover up that edge, and then as you start to squeeze, turn the cupcake at the same time, coming all the way around. Keep your squeeze consistent and your turn the same speed. When you get to the end, just gently stop and come off, and you've gone all the way around. If you find that really difficult to go all the way around, you can do that in 2 or 3 stages, it doesn't matter. Now take up your 6B piping tip, you don't want too much in it. I've just got a little bit of olive green in here, so I'm going to touch down in the center. I'm going to come straight down, touch the center of the cupcake, squeeze a small amount out, stop and come off, and you get this wonderful detailed center, and you haven't really had to do anything. So it's a great piping tip to have. Now I'm going to take up my black buttercream, my number 1 round piping tip. And you want to make sure that's nice and tight so you've got full control. And I'm going to put a black stamen in between all of these little details here in the green. So just touch down, squeeze, lift up, stop and come off. Touch, squeeze, lift, stop and come off. So you're going in between all the green little tracks that 6B has made. So keep turning the cupcake and go all the way around, filling in all the gaps. I'm making them roughly the same length so that you can see them very clearly at the top. But I'm leaving that little green bit in the middle. Now I'm going to come round and do another row of these black stamen, eyelashes I call them, and I'm not sort of coming right up next to each other, there's a little gap in between, but I'm sort of pulling up and out a little bit so that they're up against that petal edge. So just touch down, squeeze, lift, stop and come off. You can make them all different lengths. They don't all have to be exactly the same. It's just extra detail to give that poppy that lovely black centre. Oh, there's a long straggler there, and another one. Oh, I'm going to leave him on there. So go all the way around. And that's it. Now I'm going to fill in these little gaps here in between these petals. You can hardly see them, but by putting in a leaf it does add a nice bit of detail to the poppy. So not too much in your piping bag, and remember you want that point, so the buttercream's going to ooze out the sides. You want to point where you want your leaf, and then just touch the cupcake with the piping tip, squeeze a little leaf, stop and come off. And there you go, that's how I pipe a remembrance poppy. If you don't have the 128 piping tip, you can use any of the large petal shaped tips to get this same effect. For this poppy in the picture here, I used a Gem 123 piping tip, and I piped 3 individual petals in the center instead of going all the way around with one. And then for the center, I just used a star shaped piping tip for the green and put my black stamen around the edge. Follow the same procedure for the poppy you've just seen and you'll get exactly the same effect.